Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the last day of May 2021. We are on part 3, the final part of Redesign ASEAN's People's Voice in the World Crisis. Today is very important day because most of the issues we are going to discuss, especially in the afternoon, will be gearing toward the question, which is the heart of May 2021. Is this the time to redesign ASEAN? How to redesign it and by whom? There will be 5 activities, including 3 panel discussions, 1 short summary, and 1 reflection at the end of the day. This morning, we will start by the panel discussion, National Actions Plan on Business and Human Rights, NAP, how can we apply it in protecting human rights and the environment in the regions? And followed by the highlight of May 2021. And in the afternoon, we will have the panel discussions on Redesign ASEAN by people, and followed by the panels Redesigns the voice from the region futures. And at the end of the day, we will end the May 2021 by the reflection panel titled The Meaning of Redesigns, a final reflection of all co-organizers of May 2021. To start the morning panel discussion on applying NAP, National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights to protect human rights and the environment in the regions. This panel is co-organized by Community Resource Center and ETO Watch Thailand. This panel is moderated by Assistant Professor Saovanee Kaewjullakarn from International Commission of Jurists. May I invite Assistant Professor Saovanee on the screen, please. Good morning.
สวัสดีค่ะ Good morning again.
It's very nice to see you again.
Me too ค่ะ Thank you, Jurists, for introducing me. Okay, so now I'm gonna start. Okay.
So before I give you the floor, may I introduce the audience. Assistant Professor Saovanee Kaewjullakarn lectured law for over 8 years. Following that, she's decided to focus on her contribution on business and human rights. She is currently employed by UNDP Thailand and by the International Commission of Jurists Asia and Pacific Program as a legal consultant. It is a great honor to have you once again as a moderator, and I believe that you will lead the interesting discussions, and the floor is yours.
ค่ะ Good morning ค่ะ สวัสดีค่ะ Good morning everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the virtual event on National Action Plans on Business and Human Rights, or NAP, and how can we apply it in protecting human rights and the environment in the regions. My name is Saovanee Kaewjullakarn. I am the consultant from the ICJ, International Commission of Jurists, as my colleague Jerry already mentioned. So before I start discussion, let me introduce those who are not familiar with the topic. What are the National Action Plans on Business and Human Rights? Actually, okay, the NAP, they are the policy document which set out plan to be followed by the public and private stakeholder in order to ensure that business respect human rights. So NAP normally adopt to support the implementation of the UN guiding principle on business and human rights. And then to come to the point that what is UNDP? UNDP is international instruments that were endorsed by the UN Human Rights Council. It provide protect, respect, and remedy framework. This framework requires first, the state has a duty to protect individuals from human rights abuse resulting from business activity. Second, the corporate to have responsibility to respect human rights. And the third one, the obligation of state to respect to the provision of remedial processes. So NAP has been developed in many countries, including Japan, South Korea, and of course, Thailand. However, NAP also are underdeveloped in India, Indonesia, and also Malaysia. So why such move was a very good initiative? NAP itself, they were highly criticized due to the lack of real progress in the NAP implementation. Many NAPs also lack a comprehensive monitoring system in place to monitor the NAP and its achievement. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic that we are facing now may also pose further challenge to the uptake and implementation of the NAP in the regions. Due to this, that's why we are here today with our distinguished panelists who will present the challenge in developing NAP and implementation such plan. And today, our panelists include the representative from UNDP, Kun Livio, Sarandrea. He is like a UNDP global lead for business and human rights. And also we have like our colleagues from like Philippines, Kun Victoria Caranay from Economic Rights Coordinators of Ideals. And also we have our friends from Indonesia, Kun Andi, Muttaqien, he's the director of the Institutes for Policy Research and Advocacy. And of course, we are two representatives from Thailand. The first one is like Kun Kornkanok Wathanabhoom. She's a member of ETOs coalition. And the last one, Kun Sor.Rattanamanee Polkla. She's executive coordinator, Community Resources Center. So now I would like to start with Kun Livio. Kun Livio, so now the floor is yours. Kun Livio, could you please like turn on?
Yes, okay. Yes. Sorry about that. Thank you for having me, and Sawadika to Kon. And again, thank you for giving me the possibility to talk a little bit about NAPs, something that UNDP and me personally have been very involved with in the last 4 years in ASEAN, but beyond ASEAN as well. And thank you for bringing business and human rights in the program of the Mekong Environmental Week. I think the connection is very pertinent. Business, human rights, and environment now more than ever, as the business and human rights discourse is evolving recently, covering and merging with the discourse around responsibilities of companies towards the environment. So again, business, human rights, and the environment are very much linked. And thank you for the opportunity to perhaps briefly present the business and human rights discourse by expanding on what you, Professor, have already mentioned in your introduction, and talking a little bit to those that today may hear about business and human rights for the first time. And indeed, some, I'm sure, that are tuned may already be very well aware of many of the things that I'm saying, but let us use this opportunity to communicate also to those that are not necessarily specifically part of the business and human rights discourse yet. So in brief, the business human rights is the evolution, one simple way to put it, of what was once called CSR, corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility is an approach that has since the 70s probably been there, but has taken mostly the form of philanthropic efforts from companies to take care of society, again, by giving to society, but all too often that went hand in hand with those same companies abusing human rights. So there was a renewed focus around 10 years ago when the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights were adopted to ask companies to look at their operations and make sure that they are human rights compliant. In the international human rights law, normally human rights had been, before the UN Guiding Principles, almost exclusively an issue between states and citizens, right? States as the duty bearer and citizens as the rights holders. The UN Guiding Principles of Business and Human Rights essentially make companies, the business sector, an additional duty bearer. And the responsibility as additional duty bearer is illustrated in these 31 principles of the UNGPs. They were adopted, as it was already said before, 10 years ago, unanimously by all member states and all business associations by the Human Rights Council. You have already hinted to the fact that the UNGPs are divided in 3 pillars, right? The first is the duty of the state to make sure that companies do not abuse human rights. The second is actually the responsibility of business. What should business do? And that is mostly what goes under human rights due diligence, right? And then there is a third pillar of the UNGPs that looks at the remedy, meaning what should state and companies do when violations do occur, right? So that's the framework that we are all working on. Now, focus today is on NAPs. So what are NAPs? Again, you have illustrated very well before. They are policy documents. So they speak to pillar 1, right? I mean, if we go back to the structure of pillars, as I said earlier, they speak to the role of governments. They're not an instrument of companies, right? The main instrument of companies, human rights due diligence. NAPs are one of the main instruments of governments. Governments illustrate in national action plans how they plan to respond to their duties under pillar 1. The national action plans on business and human rights started to be adopted around 8 years ago. I think it's 2014 where the first NAPs were adopted mainly by members of the European Union. There are at this stage 28 of those NAPs having been approved, many more in the works. And in Asia, there are 3 standalone NAPs that were adopted. Thailand, most famously probably and known to everyone. Japan as the second, adopted around 1 year ago. And very recently, 2 days ago, we had a third NAP being adopted in Asia. And I'm very proud of it because UNDP had a big role in supporting the country that adopted, and is the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights for Pakistan. A few more are in the works, and I'll cover that later, perhaps focusing a little bit on ASEAN. Now, the NAPs are action-oriented documents, so they break down the standards of the UNGPs vis-a-vis the government, and they unpack that in actions to be taken based on a number of priorities that the country chooses in the field of business human rights. And priorities are normally the result of a baseline research, baseline assessment that it's carried out with help from civil society and from companies. Typically, these NAPs take around 2 years, 2.5 years to be adopted. The first year, the focus is mostly on the baseline assessment, done or should be done in a multi-stakeholder form. And the second part, the last 1 year, is on the very drafting, the various back and forth of various drafts being validated and eventually adopted by the government. Again, I should be stressing by the government. Now, linking it to the theme of this week, NAPs in my view, should definitely include environmental rights in their focus. And there are some NAPs that have definitely done so, including Thailand. And even more will be the case going forward, because as I said earlier, the discourse around business and human rights, guided by the recent policy decisions taken by the European Union, the discourse is going into a merging of the human rights and their environmental responsibilities of companies. So I see in the future NAP more and more including environmental aspects and environmental responsibilities for companies. So why should country adopt NAPs, those that they haven't? And there are some in ASEAN certainly that haven't yet done so. They should do that because it's the right thing to do. First of all, it is, again, a duty of the state to protect citizens from abuses from companies. But also they should do that because I strongly believe it's also the smart thing to do from the point of view of a government. More and more governments, like companies, are asked to signal their commitment to respect for human rights and respect for environmental rights in their business environment. Again, especially for countries, and that definitely applies to ASEAN, that have strong trade flows with the EU and the US, are now in need to show their commitment to supply chain that speak to European Union companies that are clean and green, as we say. Because again, norms will be adopted very soon in the EU, under which European companies will, in a mandatory way, have to report and even face fines if their entire supply chain is not rid of human rights violations. So essentially, there is a risk for companies in ASEAN to lose connection, to lose being part of supply chains of European Union companies if they don't ensure that human rights abuses don't happen in their operation. Hence, once again, it is certainly a strategic position vis-a-vis trade with the EU to adopt a national action plan where a country signals to EU member states how that country is preparing to ensure that the business environment in Thailand or Indonesia or in Malaysia is an environment which is free of risk for European companies that use ASEAN companies as their supply chain. Just quick overview of NAPs in ASEAN, and you have illustrated it already. So Thailand has adopted one, Indonesia is working on, and no doubt Andi will be saying a lot more about it. And they chose in Indonesia a different title. It's called National Strategy on Business and Human Rights, but it's still essentially a NAP. It's been in the works for a long time, I think almost 4 years, and will be adopted hopefully soon. Again, Andi, I'm sure will say more about it. In Malaysia, also, there is a formal process to adopt a NAP. They started 3 times, as a matter of fact. The government changed and restarted recently, around 1 year ago, and should be completed. I think their timeline now is beginning of 2023, but a very serious effort happening in Malaysia right now. In Vietnam, also, there is a national action plan on responsible business. So again, name is slightly different, but still relying on the principles of the UNDP. So I still consider it definitely a NAP. And then there is Myanmar, that at some point did make a commitment of developing the NAP, but it's not being taken forward at the moment. And as far as ASEAN is concerned, those are the current formal processes taking place. Beyond ASEAN, and you mentioned some, Professor, we have India drafting a NAP and almost at the end of the process. We have Mongolia also almost at the end of the process of drafting a NAP. and Nepal that has just started. Just maybe a last point and hint to the overall question on NAP and ASEAN and how can NAPs help redesigning ASEAN. Obviously, redesigning ASEAN is a big effort, and but NAPs perhaps can play a certain role in uniting strategies of ASEAN member states, ensuring a coherency between the policies of the ASEAN states if NAPs are coherently developed in more than one country. And also there is the fact that many business human rights issues are transnational in nature. They go beyond borders of ASEAN countries. Therefore, it is important that NAPs speak not only of what's happening within the country that owns the NAP, but also they speak about the responsibility of companies, for example, in the case of Thailand, Thai companies, when they operate in other countries. Maybe I'll stop here, and then of course happy to come back with any further question. Thank you.
Okay,ค่ะ. Thank you,คุณLivio นะคะ So thank you for your presentation. For me, I think it's very clear because you mentioned about the history, so why we have UNDP and come into NAP, and I have to congratulations to Pakistan that you mentioned that they already has NAP for a few days, right? Yeah, so I think it's very good news. And for you, I think it's really clear because you say several times, so why NAP is very important for an ASEAN, because this is kind of tool for us to avoid the trade sanctions from US and the EU. So of course, so this is the right thing to do. So the ASEAN government, we should consider this, and of course, so now we see the how can I say we see the strong commitment from our ASEAN member to do that. Yeah, of course, Myanmar also have this effort. Okay, so now we will go to the our colleagues from the Philippines, Kun Victoria Caranay. She's from Economic Rights and coordinators of the IDEAL. Yeah, welcome our colleagues from the Philippines. So now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So before I start, I'd like to share my screen. Good morning, everyone, and I'm really honored to be part of our session today. So as mentioned by the professor, the Philippines doesn't have a NAP actually in development right now, and I'll go a little bit about why that is exactly. Before that, a little bit about our work. She mentioned I'm from IDEALS, which is a Philippine NGO, which provides legal services to the marginalized and vulnerable groups. And we have 4 core programs, and our business and human rights work actually falls under the program I lead, which is the Economic Rights Program. So a little bit about the history of how BHR started in the Philippines. The conversation was started by our Commission on Human Rights, which is an independent body from our actual government. And the resolution found that a mining company had violated the human rights of the communities in and around their open pit mine in a community called Didipio. But since the Commission on Human Rights is an independent body from our government, they don't actually have the legal mandate to lead the NAP development process or to make any commitments. So at this point, there were only consultations, trainings, and mainstreaming that happened, but no draft or NAP process was actually initiated. In 2016, the Presidential Human Rights Committee, which is under the executive branch of our government, was designated to lead the Philippine NAP process. And they started some consultations, but only limited it to state actors, government agencies. At this point, we were starting our business and human rights work, and we had approached them asking to open up the consultations, but they said they weren't ready yet. and that they were working on a policy that would give them a more legal mandate to open the conversation up. But till now, the policy that they were working on was never issued, and the process has since stalled. So for our work specifically, we actually started doing BHR work even before we were aware of the UNGPs on BHR. So if you can see here, there's a picture on the right. This was when Typhoon Bofa hit in Mindanao in the Philippines. And after this, Ideals was approached to do due diligence for the farmers for them to be able to access rehabilitation loans and to start their farms once again, because the agribusinesses that they were partnered with offered them no support. And through this process, we discovered that the contracts were very one-sided, and most of the benefits were in favor of the businesses only. So we came in and we documented their narrative through case studies. We assisted their contract negotiations, and we also started national policy advocacy. But at this point, our approach was more naming and shaming. So it was a little bit adversarial and put the agribusiness on the defensive. And it made influencing and engaging them to be more responsible and to be more proactive in having positive impact towards the farmers. It made it more challenging and difficult. So through the years of advocacy, we were thinking of ways how we can get around these challenges and how to re-strategize our approach. And in one of our projects, we encountered the UNGPs on BHR. And that's when we saw the opportunity that in this framework, as was mentioned before, that the businesses are also seen as an additional duty bearer. And so they're key stakeholders and partners to achieving change and protecting human rights. So we saw this as an opportunity to reframe our advocacy using our existing work. And we started to adopt a sort of a critical friend approach, which means that we still call them out for negative impacts and practices, but we also try to identify good practices or a business case for responsible business and keep our approach more balanced and objective, because this is in recognition also that businesses have great potential to be change agents, and that they will have great impact on the lives of community more quickly than national legislation, even the binding treaty, which are very strong instruments, strong policy instruments, but of course they take a long time to achieve. So like as was mentioned before, if we can have a NAP passed, it will only take about 2 years for a NAP to be implemented. But for example, in the Philippines, national laws typically take about 10 years or 3 governments for it to even pass. And of course, we all know that the treaty making process also takes very long. And so our BHR NAP work is actually just one stream, and it's part of our larger advocacy of awareness raising and pushing for enabling laws. And we always make sure that that BHR NAP lens is in our case studies, communication works, and whenever we engage with other stakeholders. So how do we continue to engage knowing that there is this stall in the Philippines? So these are the organizations, or a lot of them, who are still working on business and human rights right now. And we were more formally convened in around 2018, 2019, under the leadership of the Commission on Human Rights. And this is more of an informal network where we share our initiatives and tap each other's expertise. These are a lot of the organizations that also work on human rights and land rights as well, and environmental rights. And we were able to make a national guidance document on BHR for Philippine practitioners. So it aligns the UNGPs with, for example, our demographics and some of the policies in the Philippines. And how else can we engage in relation to the theme of the week? I think climate justice is very important for the Philippines because, and for the region in general, because the region is generally vulnerable, but the Philippines is actually I think the top most vulnerable country in the world to the impacts of climate change. And we see about 20 typhoons in a year, and several of them can be quite devastating, economically speaking, and of course their impact on the ground on communities. And our Commission on Human Rights has been leading for 5 years now the first ever in the world a climate change and human rights inquiry that aims to hold 47 of the biggest fossil fuel companies in the world liable for climate change impacts on communities. But as of now, no decision has been made yet because they've been very careful on this, knowing that it's the first time and they want to make sure that they do the best decision that they can. So what are our expectations? Because of the stall, we just want to make sure that the awareness is there, that the conversation is there, and we want to ensure that when the process does restart in the Philippines, that these stakeholders are ready to engage and ready to provide their input and ready to, for the communities, ready for them to communicate the narratives from the ground as evidence as well. So since we actually don't have a draft, these are just some of the recommended priorities that we can see based on our own work. And a lot of these are actually very connected. Like as Livio had mentioned previously, there are increasingly more cross-border investments and multinational operations. So they can undertake large development projects sometimes in the Philippines, which often lead to climate change impacts, can also affect community rights and labor rights. And actually the Philippines is also the most dangerous country for environmental defenders and for media practitioners. So it's also really important for us, for the NAP, to address protecting human rights defenders. So I think I will stop there for now and happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kun Victoria. I'm not sure like anyone think like me, but for me, I feel like overwhelmed when I saw your presentation and how your organization work. Because like even we see a little development of the NAP in the Philippines, but this is show how important of CSO and how important of the role of CSO to raise the voice and to bring BHR issue into the to raise the voice and to raise this to the public. And I also amazed by the presentation that you already like have a baseline study of the prioritized concern. So for me, it is very, very important and good job. Okay, okay. So we'll go to our friends from Indonesia. So Kun Andi Muttaqien, he is the Deputy Director of the Institute for Policy Research and Advocacy. So now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the invitation and this very important forum. I think, yeah. Okay, I will talk about our NAP process in Indonesia. Maybe is just briefly, very briefly, because yeah, later I will show you how is the current process and how is the problem or obstacles in any step of NAP development process. Okay, this is my presentation. Yeah. So this is the question, guideline question from committee for me, for us, yeah. And yeah, why our organization now engage with and participate in the NAP process is, yeah, because based on what we are doing now in the area of natural resources governance, yeah, we have a problem, big problem with the governance, and yeah, we also monitor since 2014 about the environment and human rights defender, and you know it is consistently we have a problem with the environment defender, because the protection of the human rights and environment defender, because in 2020 we note that there were 60 cases of violence against environment defenders. It is double if we compare with the 2019. And also in 2020, we have several cases with the natural resources, yeah, in area where they are the indigenous people, local communities become as a victim until they have problem and conflict with the plantation or any corporation. Yeah, they're victim until death, yeah, deadly conflict. So I think that's why we are now try to still participating and monitor about the process of developing NAP, because it is yeah, NAP is one of aspect for in UNGPs, yeah. But you know, NAP can strongly should be have a strongly recommendation to the state how to mitigate the cases what I showed before. So NAP and UNGPs as a whole is a new approach in encouraging companies to respect human rights. So we think it is important for CSO to use this, to use the UNGPs and also NAP as one of our advocacy tools or space. Yeah, this is why we are start from 2015. We have a focus with the business and human rights issues. And this is also why we think we need to more intervene in the UNGPs or business and human rights areas, because it is just one example. If we look to the third pillar of UNGPs, access to remedy, they have a non-judicial mechanism as one of access remedy platform. Yeah, state-based and non-state-based non-judicial mechanism. Now, after the UNGPs and after 10 years of UNGPs, they just improve of their mechanism with the many chapter on human rights in their mechanism. So we think, for example, ELSAM still have a still doing some advocacy in RSPO forum, and also we try to always engage with the CAO, IFC, and also ELSAM now publish the important publication from OECD, because this is a new area and it is important for CSOs to intervene here. And what is current status of the NAP in Indonesia? So it is maybe it makes you guys make asking why it is there is several initiative to produce of the NAP. For example, in 2017, Komnas HAM, our national human rights institutions, released the NAP. But you know, it is the good start for Indonesia to process the NAP, because in that year there are no ministry would like to take this responsibility to speak about the business and human rights, to speak about the national action plan. And then after that, in now several business and human rights action are submitted to our national action plan on human rights. So we have the general national action plan on human rights for 5 years, 2021 until 2025. So they have a 4 focus, and before the national strategy on human rights just running out now, we try to put several action to the national action on human rights. Yeah. And then what Pak Livio said before, Indonesia on running the process of developing the national strategies on business and human rights. Yeah, yes, substantially it is an NAP on business and human rights, but and also right, they just start the process since 2019, I think. Yeah, 19. That's right. But until now, there is no publicly open the document. Officially, the document still not publicly, and there are no consultation to the CSOs, I think. But we are ELSAM. Now we are invited as one of partner in the National Task Force of Business and Human Rights, and we try to strongly recommend them, the National Task Force, to organize the the public consultation, meaningful consultation, and etc. This is the example what I'm sorry, this is still in bahasa ya. This is the action which is insert to our national action plan on human rights, the general national action plan on human rights. So there are 4 focus issues for the children to the target group. Yeah, there are 4 target group: children, women, disabilities, and the indigenous people. So, for example, for the indigenous people, there are 1 action, yeah, about how to solve the conflict, how to resolve the conflict without any litigation process. So we try to put the anti-slave chapter in the 1 action in the indigenous people. And then this is now the national strategy on business and human rights. This the current status is on process developing. It has been running since 2019, not involving CSOs, I think, but the National Task Force just invited us yesterday, 2 days ago, to that they will organize the national consultation, public consultation, in the middle of October. And one of the officer in ministry also told us that in the end of the October, they will release this NAP. So ELSAM participate as a partner of the National Task Force, and because we also don't know we don't have any draft, the current draft, as far as I noted in the discussion before with the ministry, officer from ministry. So there are 3 focus on, increase understanding, awareness, and capacity of all stakeholders. And the second is development of guidelines and structures on human rights expectation for business actors. And the third is increasing the compliance of business actors to respect human rights. Yeah, this is I think if Livio can help us to make the meaningful consultation with the ministry or the National Task Force, it will be very helpful, because we don't know about the current draft is, but the public participation is important for the NAP development. This is my last slide. So I think the recommendation is public participation for the NAP process, yeah, and also the comprehensive study, because we don't know. Yeah, we know that the ministry have several baseline study about the 3 sectors: tourism, plantation, and also the mining sector. But we don't know about how they can capture of the other sector to this NAP. Yeah, because Indonesia not only the 3 sector, and we also recommend that in the NAP should be strong recommendation for government, not for the business, because we know the problem, the conflict sometimes also because it's based on the regulation. It's based on the because the conflict is running from the past. So the portion maybe I would suggest to strong recommendation for the government and also the local government maybe. And for the Asian members, I think we can share our your experience in Thailand process in NAP. So what the problem in the previous development process, it can be, yeah, it cannot happen in the Indonesian NAP process. Yeah, I stop there for now. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, ค่ะ คุณ Auntie from ELSAM. Okay, so like first once I like saw your presentation, the main thing that you try to do, like this emphasize on the role of CSO to pushing NAP and to raise the concern about business and human rights. So like even you say that the government now developing NAP but without consultation with the CSO. But again, I think this is the problem. This is not only your country. Maybe like Pisor from Thailand maybe also can share what we are experienced. But let's say we have the same problem. But the one thing that I want to like mention that like the strong commitment or strong effort of CSO is help a lot to bring NAP and to raise voice of the concern. So this is I very like admire your work. Okay, so now we are like come to the session with transboundary. So in this session we have the representative from the member of ETO Watch Coalition, คุณ Kornkanok Wathanabhoom ค่ะ The floor is yours ค่ะ
Thank you, Atlantic. Let me share my screen. Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm Kornkanok Wathanabhoom. I'm a member of ETO Watch Coalition from Thailand. The coalition was formed by the CSO and NGO which work on the transboundary issues that are related to the human rights, community rights, and environment. We are monitoring Thai investment abroad in the energy sector, mining, ETOs in ASEAN, particularly in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Today, I will speak about Thailand National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights that related to the ETO issue. Why we decide to work on NAP? The map demonstrates that there are national cooperation from Thailand in neighboring countries. Those cases are the case that the ETO Watch are working. For example, the Sayaburi Dam, the sugar case from Cambodia, and the Wai Special Economic Zone in Myanmar. The Mekong Butterfly and the ETO Watch also conduct the report on Thailand foreign direct investment impact on communities, environment, and human rights violation. Well, we work on this transboundary impact, trans-border investment, helping the affected communities to access remedy. That is the lack of responsibility, accountability from the state and business sector. The human rights mechanism in host state may be not strong enough. So therefore, we were looking for the mechanism to protect, respect, and access to remedy in the home country of the parent company, which is Thailand. I thought NAP may be a good choice to implement the UNGP in terms of Thailand context. That's why we engage with NAP. For the process of NAP in Thailand, there was a cabinet resolution on 26 January 2016 about the Wai Special Economic Zone in Myanmar. In this paper is mentioned about the UNGP and also provide a recommendation to Thailand for conducting NAP. It was first time that NAP was mentioned in a policy level. However, the Thai government did not take it into account. So how the ETO engaged in the NAP process. This timeline will show like how we try to engage with NAP and how NAP in Thailand was developed. Once the Universal Periodic Review Cycle 2 in 2016, the Sweden recommend Thailand to develop and implement the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. And Thailand accept that recommendation. Then in 2017, the Cabinet resolution appointed the Right and Liberties Protection Department to conduct the NAP. The RLPD start to do the National Baseline Assessment or NBA, which the human rights defender, CSO, NGO can participate in the regional area. But the process was lacking in genuine public participation. Why? The government agency lack awareness and understand of business and human rights. The ETO Watch cooperate with Thailand National Human Rights Commission to follow up the cabinet resolution that related to the transnational cooperation from Thailand. The ETO issue is the one of challenge issue globally because the ETO is not provided in the UNGP. So when we try to put it in NAP, it's so difficult. We also went to Geneva, where there was a BHR forum and had a session with SOYA, the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights. We had a opportunity to explain about the problem and raise concern on the ETO. What we do in the country, we send a letter to the RLPD to follow up the draft of NAP. We found that there are, at the first time, there are 3 priority areas. The ETO issue were not included. We send and translate version of the ESCR Committee General Comment number 24 on the state obligation in the context of business activities, which is the most relevant ETO document. Together with providing fact-finding case study from both from Thailand and abroad, such as the duty of care case from the UK. And we also provided recommendation why Thailand should include the ETO in NAP. Moreover, we did engage several events and gave comment to the online public opinion for the draft of NAP. When the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights had a country visit to Thailand in March 2018, the ETO Watch also met with the UN Working Group both in Bangkok and Chiang Mai to provide briefing of the problem on Thai outbound investment. Because our voice is not being heard, so we think if the UN Working Group spoke about it, Thai government may consider to include the ETO in NAP. And yes, finally, the ETO were included in NAP. In 2019, Thailand proudly to present that we have the first NAP in Asia. The key priority area in Thailand NAP are labor, community, land, natural resources, and environment, human rights defender. And the last one is cross-border investment and multinational enterprise. The ETO issue is included in the latter. Normally, Thailand has a problem in the law enforcement. NAP is not a law, it's just a policy, but have the same problem about implementation. Because Thailand already had NAP, so I would like to talk a bit about the challenges in the implementation. The NAP recommendations are overly broad and cannot be implemented or translated into action. The regulatory mechanism tend to rely on the role of state and public authorities without an inclusive accountability mechanism for implementation of NAP, and without a mechanism to ensure information disclosure for the sake of monitoring NAP implementation. The judiciary lacks awareness and understanding of business and human rights, and the review of transboundary complaints, such as Pak Bang case that in the judgment also mentioned that the Thai government do not do the transboundary EIA because domestic law did not provide. But in NAP, it said Thai government should consider to do the transboundary EIA. There is the lack of the regulate liability of affiliated company or to clarify the relationship between the parent company and subsidiary company. The business sector and finance institution lack regulatory mechanism, social and environmental policy and safeguards. The company level prevent mechanism concerning the impact of their investment. Most of the existing policy and regulatory mechanism operate on a voluntary basis and lack effective enforceability. For the access to remedy, the affected communities face problem and obstacle accessing the effective remedy. However, there is a progressive from the Office of Security and Exchange Commission or SEC. They enforce the 56-1 report for the public company. To do the report include the detail of corporate governance, social responsibility, review the ESG, the environment, social and governance, and have to explain about what is the company sustainable in terms of environment and social. So I can see some progress from the SEC mechanism. And finally, because there is no monitoring system, so the CSO and NGO, we try to do self-monitoring of NAP implementation once it was the first year of implementation. And this year, in November, we also will do the second year monitoring again. And I will talk about the recommendation in the next session. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,ค่ะ. Thank you, Kun Kornkanok, for your presentation. So again, I have to say again, without having like strong commitment of NGO, like from our colleagues from the Philippines, Indonesia, and also Thailand, without all of you, so the NAP will not going to happen. Especially Thailand is a like very good example that like ETO work so hard to push the issue of transnational cooperation, because the problem of Thai outbound investment, we see a lot, but is a big gap how to hold corporate accountability. So now we have this into the NAP, and we also see the progressive of like also now we have ESG. So it's a compulsory for the Thai listed company to report about like environmental, social, and the government, right? So this is a progressive, not progressive, but it's like how can I say, the positive point that we have. But we also have the several remain challenges as Kun Kornkanok already mentioned. Yes, so we come to our last speaker. So Kun Sor.Rattanamanee Polkla, she's our Executive Coordinator, Community Resources Center. Okay,พี่สอ, let's go.
Thank you very much. You will surprise because we already have a Thai representative talking about the National Action Plan in this panel already, but I just would like to introduce you about how we can monitor or how we can follow the National Action Plan when any country has already developed or developing. Then actually when I work on this issue, I also try to see how other country has done in this how many countries already done in the global. And if you go to the globalnap.org, this is the website that you can find all the country what they have done with the country with the green line, the green color. This is already published for the NAP. Then we have US, we have in and other. You can see for the European country is all the green, right? But in our region in ASEAN, I would say that we also doing some developing because of some country already have a green, some country have a blue, and some country has like a Philippines have a orange color. That orange color I also include that is also National Action Plan, but it's not by the government. Here, if you click in each country, you will see the status of the National Action Plan in each country. Like a Philippines, yeah, they say that is the government has not committed to the developing, but the process is the CSO doing. And you can see Indonesia is already have been doing. You can see for Thailand, the information here is like you can see some briefly of the National Action Plan process and also the information on the National Action Plan. And yes, what Kun Kornkanok said that the Thai CSO working a lot on the National Action Plan. Actually, it starts with the business and human rights principle, and then Thailand commit that the Thai government commit to adopt the National Action Plan. Then after we follow, we know that is very important for the national action plan on the on our work, especially because of the national action plan is about talking about the business and human rights, and on the business and human rights is related with our organization, our work, because all of the cases that we do, we working related with the business, such as like the mining, the hydropower, the factory, everything on the, because of we are country of the developing country, then we have a lot of development project. But in the development project, how it can be like a protect, respect, and remedy as a business and human right, then we have to come out to call for the all the national action plan should have the recommendation, and we have we work hard and we have recommendation before the draft, like with the zero draft and the final draft, we make I think a lot in the ETO is a lot, and then all of the recommendation is like 100 recommendation. But I would say that 70% of our recommendation is put in the national action plan of Thailand, that we can claim like that because of we check and we also follow up with that, as Kornkanok said that we have a now monitoring. We make the conference from last year, and also this year we will do, and we will do in every year to make sure that the national action plan will be implemented according to the what we recommendation. It's not according to the government, but it's must be by our recommendation. And we also doing like we not doing in the country. We do the we try to make it more concrete and also more possible that our recommendation for the implementation process and also for the contact of the NAP will be implemented. Then we go to the like a UN Business and Human Rights Forum every year. It's not because of we want to go to Geneva, but it's because of we want to make sure that the government will listen. Because when I realized that whenever we go to the international platform, Thai government also used to do. Thai government used to send somebody to attend to the UN meeting. And if no one over there talking about Thailand, then how the Thai government respond? Then we have to make a voice over there. And if we make a voice from Thailand, they not listen. I would say that they don't listen, but they listen whenever they have to keep a face of the country. Then they respond everything whenever we do. Then the role of the CSO for when we talk about the national action plan is mean that whenever we think that the issue that is related to you, you can work. My organization, CRC, we are not working on the labor right. We are not working on the because in the 4 priority of national action plan, we have a land and community rights and environment. That is, we are working. We have the human rights defender. We are working. We have the ETO issue. We have working, but we are not working with the labor. But if you see with our activity, we not like just only working on us. We also calling our network to work together. And with the labor right, they also working hard to get all the message, all the developing protection putting there. And I agree with Andi that the role of national action plan should be with the government. Means government need to respond on this. That is mean government have to develop all the law and regulation to control the situation in the right way of the business and human rights expectation. But also we now know that the business sector, the corporate, they're also doing something according to business and human rights. That's why Thailand have the Global Compact Association, right? And they're also doing with the UNDP very well. I know that it's also good. I can say it's a good practice that we also can ask the corporate to have their role to engage with the business and human rights. But also government have to make the balance that how the government can deal with the CSO and corporate for National Action Plan implementation. This is the question that we have to monitor and doing for this thing. Thank you.
โอเคค่ะ thank you คุณสอรัตนมณีค่ะ so like you show the big pictures of how does NAP work, so it should incorporate with business sector as well. And you mentioned that like Thailand is also, let's say, good example to involve business. But anyway, the government, this is the role of the government to balance between like CSO and NGO. Actually, from my perspective, like, and I think it's true, it's like the CSO or NGO is a good friend for the government, because the NGO always support the human rights reputations about human rights concern. So this is, we have to like the government should like consider this part too. Okay, so now we have like Q&A, but before we go to Q&A, so we have to say sorry for our colleagues from Indonesia, Mr. Andi, because he has to leave because he a bit sick. But if you have any question, so you can write to our organizer and we email him later to clarify about Indonesia part. So now we come to Q&A session. I'm not sure whether we have like questions from participants or not. Otherwise, I'm gonna come to Kun Livio to like make a quick recommendation around 5 minutes. This is okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so now we jump to you. Okay.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I'll use the 5 minutes to recommend building on points made by the other panelists, many of which I found very, very interesting, and perhaps building on some points just made by Kun Sor. Advocacy is critical for the implementation of the NAPs, and of course for the development NAPs wherever they are not being developed. And I very much like the fact when she pointed to raising the level of the discourse to Geneva, right? Putting the government a little bit on the spotlight, I think is important. It works with Thailand, they work with other governments, and eventually governments like to be in the spotlight if they have good things to say. So that is certainly a recommendation that I would agree with, and that perhaps can happen formally and even more importantly during the UPR processes, right? The annual forum is a key moment in which you can do that Kun Sor was referring to. The UPR is an even better moment to put a certain government under the spotlight. Second reflection is on the opportunities of peer learning. I mean, countries talking to countries. Very often, we use that a lot in UNDP. Often it's easier to convince a government to take a certain policy step if it's another government telling them that it's a good idea, rather than the UN saying so. So this is why we organize all these regional forums where governments speak to government, right? So putting the governments of countries where an app is being developed with countries where it's not being developed is one key advocacy tool that I want to point to. Third, an actor that I haven't heard mentioned today is national human rights institutions, or were very, very just briefly touched upon. I think they also can play a key role in advocacy in countries, of course, where they do exist, and also be in touch between themselves when it comes to extraterritorial issues vis-a-vis human rights. Fourth, and probably I'll stop there because my time may be over, businesses. Thank you, Consor, to point to businesses. They have an important role to play in all this. Businesses have a lot to gain, especially good businesses. Those that have decided they want to do good, they are interested in a level playing field. They want to make sure that if they respect rules, everyone does. So businesses can be great advocates for national action plans on business and human rights, for rules around environmental protection. Because if they decided to do that, because it's the right thing to do or the smart thing to do, whatever reason they decided to do it, they may want those other companies, not to give other companies undue advantages if other companies choose not to respect human rights or not to respect environmental rights. So let's use businesses more. Let us not see only the businesses as the bad guys. They are often also the good guys. As much as businesses should be seeing CSOs not as the cops or those that highlight the challenges, but actually those people that can help them better than anyone else to identify what their risks vis-a-vis human rights are. So again, let's bring all these different actors closer for better advocacy. I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you, Kun Livio. So that's why we have to have you or UNDP today, CSO in Thailand or CSO in ASEAN country or NGO. We cannot survive or we cannot work effectively without support from the UNDP, especially the role of UNDP to have a dialogue between G to G. This is very important, and your role is very important to spotlight the concern to the public. This is we see UNDP play a vital role in this part to support CSO a lot. And also because I forgot to mention once Indonesia said that in the process of starting NAP, Indonesia National Human Rights Commission come to involve at the first step. So that's why the National Commission, National Human Rights Commission is very play active role in this part. So it's very important. Before I go to another speaker, we have one question. Maybe I'm gonna read and everyone in this panelist can answer. Let's feel free to answer. Is it possible to have for the fourth pillar public engagement participation? Because of now there are only duty of state and business according to 3 pillars.
May I
have an idea, but I've just spoken, so I'll let the other panelists take that question, and of course happy to come back to it.
Yeah, I think actually when we talk about public engagement or participation, it already in all the pillar. We cannot make it specific or as a fourth pillar, because if we put in the fourth pillar, then another pillar will say that, oh, sorry, the public engagement or participation is another pillar. It's not us, something like that. Then I think the way that we put this public participation in all the pillar, that's why we every time when we work on a national action plan or business and human rights, we also used to ask for the public participation every time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kun Saw, for your answer. So, and anyone else want to answer again or no? Okay. So now, okay. So if you have any questions from our participants, so you can write in the chat box. I will read to our participants. But now, I would like to hear the recommendations from our colleagues from Philippines, Kun Victoria, about your recommendation for today.
Thank you. So I think it was already quite well highlighted by the moderator and our colleagues here today, the importance of the engagement of the National Human Rights Commissions and the National Human Rights Institutions, and CSOs and civil society in general to help build the momentum of the engaging towards a NAP process. And I think it's really important for NAPs to be responsive and reflective of the local context and needs. I know there's some conversation around developing a regional NAP, but I think a national level action plan will still be more able to be more evidence-based in their prioritizations with the needs and the gaps at the community level and of the stakeholders of the country. And we should also ensure that the process itself is inclusive and multi-stakeholder. I was hearing before that for example, in Thailand, they felt that the government wasn't really that inclusive until they were put on the spotlight. But including all stakeholders will really ensure that all interests are included, and that it will be a stronger NAP that can be implemented in the future. And for the Philippines specifically, we have quite a lot of remedies already available in law, a lot of mechanisms. We have quite a complex legal framework. And to bring those existing mechanisms into the NAP, specifically Pillar 3, so that you're not sort of reinventing the wheel. It's already things that, for example, the human rights defenders, the lawyers are familiar with, and they can also help save on time and resources in the NAP development process. And in connection with the theme for the week for the environment, I think that can come in the human rights due diligence process in the NAPs. I think it should specifically also tackle environmental due diligence. So looking at the potential and actual impacts on the environment of operations of businesses and their supply chains. But it should be a holistic view. So environmental, social, and governance aspects all have to be considered. And I also like the point made about peer learning. I think this is very useful for the ASEAN in general, since our context is quite similar. This is actually something that we CSOs in the Philippines are also keen on having, so that, for example, we can learn from the experience of Thailand or Pakistan or Japan and see how those experiences can help improve the conversation at national level. And also, I also like the point about businesses being also the good guys, or potential for being the good guys, because precisely this is why we also see them as change agents. We see more and more that businesses are opening up to this kind of point of view. And we also see that funding investors are pushing more for this kind of sustainable and responsible businesses, because there is a growing business case, or it's already been established in growing evidence that being more sustainable or being more responsible have a lot of benefits for businesses, for long-term risk reduction, long-term stability, and businesses who are more compliant with human rights actually are more profitable in the long run. So in essence, having BHR as a NAP or in practice is really a win-win solution for everyone. So I think that's it for me, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Kun Victoria. For me, it's very clear. And again, as you say, when we talk about NAP, we should have state engagement, CSO, and also business parties are a key partner to develop the NAP as well. This is very key. And you also highlight that. And we, before we go to like Kun Kornkanok, we have one question from our participants. Are there any country that implement successfully NAP, and how? Again, are there any countries that implement successfully NAP, and how?
I can come in if you want.
Okay, sure.
It's $1 million question, because the word success it needs to always be compared with the expectations, right? With what we mean by success of a NAP. And in general, I had the feeling, I mean, national action plans are plans, right? Are broad policy documents. In general, I think the expectations on the NAPs are a bit too high in terms of, you know, being that game changer, right? I mean, the responsible business practice is not going to change, to be honest, in 4 years in any country, just by passing the policy document, right, which is non-binding. So that's the first point I wanted to make. Now, in terms of NAPs that I've seen resulted in big, for example, normative changes, the one I'm thinking right now is the one of Germany that did say, I remember well in the NAP, companies should be doing this, and otherwise the next step is to adopt mandatory due diligence laws. Germany did what they had planned. They actually did adopt a due diligence act a few months ago, which now makes human rights due diligence mandatory. So this is the example that I have in mind of a strong action, which was in an app, which the government then had the courage to take forward, and I believe will have a very practical impact on corporate behavior. That's the one perhaps I would point to at this stage, Germany, maybe Switzerland as well. But certainly we should look more at countries that had an app for a longer period of time. In Asia, all NAPs are too young. I mean, Thailand starts to come to a point in which, you know, there should be, you know, some relatively serious accountability. It's 2 years, and you know, I'm glad that Khun Sor and others will be organizing again the review conference in November, which we'll be happy to support if that can help, because we're all here, right? We'll all try to figure out where Thailand stands now in terms of accountability of what they promised, because it's been now 2 years, right? But for the rest, you know, all other NAPs in Asia are really too young to say whether they've had an impact or not. Again, in EU, those two examples that I wanted to mention are Germany and Switzerland. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Livio, for answering the question. Anyone else want to add to the point? Otherwise, I will go to
me.
Okay,
okay, I would like to add more example. I'm not sure is it in NAP or not, but I would like to say the UK also a good example of accountability, that the affected people from the host state can find the justice in the UK court, which is the parents company there. So with their law, which is the duty of care, so a lot of cases normally from a lot of cases from Africa came to the UK court for company accountability, the parents company accountability. So that is one successful, I can say, successful for access to justice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Khun Kornkanok. So now it's come to you also for make a recommendations. Okay, thank you.
Okay, come back again. So my recommendation to Thailand NAP, but quite specific to the ETO issue. The first one is ensure the meaningful participation of the public. I would like to say about this. This is the basic issue, but is this needed in practice? People don't have much opportunity to participate, and even though they participate, their voice is not take into account from the government or from the business sector. There is more challenges for the affected communities in abroad. In the ETO case, like how those affected community, they can participate with the government in the home state or the parent company in the home state. Secondly, ensure access to information. It is difficult to get the information, and I don't know why in Thailand, why people have to pay the money for getting the document. Please can say about that. These two recommend affected community, the human rights defender in the beginning, so it's quite important. Next one, NAP should provide the monitoring and evaluation system, which include the human rights defender, the CSO, and the NGO in the M&E process, because we can find that something need to fix or change now or immediately. We should not wait until the next NAP. Maybe it's too late. NAP should provide regulatory law on transboundary investment, leading to the exploitation of legal loophole in neighboring countries that affect human rights. For the environment-related issue, NAP should manage the transnational cooperation based on the precautionary principle. And lastly, again, same with Kun Livio, the mandatory human rights due diligence law is needed for the Thai business sector. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kornkanok, for your clear recommendation. I'm not sure whether do we have any question, but let's say from now there is no question. Okay, so now we will go to Kun Sor.Rattanamanee to make a recommendation.
Thank you. I would like to say that when I want to make a recommendation, I also want to make a recommendation not only for the government, but with ourselves, with the people in the country. I also want to recommend to them because of I don't believe that everything can be happen by the government itself. Everything can happen when we have a strong participation and also engagement. Then even when we talk about like a local or grassroots organization, everyone used to say that how we can do it. It's like it's outside the country, it's the government, it's the UN in Geneva, we cannot do. But what we realize and what our experience when we share about the National Action Plan training, the business and human rights training with the community also can do by monitoring and using their cases to show that what is happening in the country, what the NAP developed or implemented, then this is also can monitor and also can use the cases for the for checking that our National Action Plan in Thailand is started in 2019. I will not count for the 2019 because it's now in October or December. Then last year and this year, what is happened, what the situation developed by the National Action Plan. This is the local and grassroots organization also can make a voice for that. Then you also can engage. And also the networking is very important to work in the role of the National Action Plan. There is a lot of people asking me that, are you sure that the National Action Plan can do something better? Then because of it seems like this National Action Plan is supporting the corporate or development project to make them more, how to say, more grand, a good view or something like that. But in the reality, it's not like that. Then I reply by this way. I reply that this is just the mechanism. This is the new mechanism that we can use to follow and monitor and ask the government that, hey, you have a National Action Plan. You go to Geneva and you go to the international view, showing that you are the best working on the business and human rights. You're very proud that you are the first country in Asia that you develop the national action plan. Then you have to respond, not just only make in the paper, you have to make in the reality. This is the way that I reply. And I would say that in the national action plan, in any country, I believe that all the regulation, in the recommendation is not only for the corporate, it's for everyone. And then this is the way we have to use the national action plan as a one mechanism that you can use, same what the other mechanisms like the judicial mechanism or non-judicial as the UN guiding principle or UN covenants. You can use that. And the recommendation what I would like to make it in when we are the conference on Mekong and ASEAN regional work, we would like to see that how the ASEAN supporting all the member country to apply for national action plan and also UN guiding principle on the business and human rights in every country in ASEAN. Because in ASEAN country, almost of us, I think all of us except Singapore, we are developing country. And we are facing with the business and human rights issue. Every development project that I already said that is related with that. Then ASEAN must do anything more, or even ASEAN, ASEAN Intergovernment on human rights. ASEAN also can work in the role of ASEAN to use the business and human rights national action plan to follow up and monitor the situation in ASEAN as well. And with the level of the other regional level or international level as a UN or even UNDP and other UN mechanism, you also can engage and also helping the people in each country to develop or support them for the monitoring and also for advocacy and even for training to make the people understand more and more about the human rights issue. Because without knowledge, it's very difficult to make the people aware of their rights and exercise for their rights. Then this is the last point that I would like to say, that the knowledge and also public engagement is very important for all the mechanism, not only national action plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pisor. Before I jump into the ending session, for now there is no question, but again, so now we still have time. So like if you have any question, you can like type in the chat box, and then I will read and to all participants, to all panelists here. But I would like to say that because Pisor said that, like she said that human rights is not the duty only for the state, but human rights is for everyone. So for now, wake up everyone, because now the future is yours already. Yeah, so I want to say that. But so if there is no question, so I will like come to my conclusion. I think this is okay, right? Okay, so like for all of your concerns, I can summarize and I can point out the challenging to implementing NAP is as the following. As noted by our speaker, it is challenge to have a NAP that address the actual BHR problem in the country with adequate participation of civil society in the process. So in Thailand, even we have one, it is also challenging to ensure that NAP will be implemented effectively in the manner that it is comply with the UNDP on business and human rights. And now today, we hope that this panel discussion will help echo voice of everyone to the government. Many works need to be done. Many shortcomings for yet to be addressed by all government all around the world. Again, it's time to say goodbye, but our work has not finished yet. Thank you everyone for joining the event today, and thank all panelists today.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Saovanee, for your very interesting moderation, and thank you all panelists for sharing your incredible experience. So up next is the short highlight points from the past 6.5 days to be debriefed by male representative.